Good morning to my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. As you can see, it's a beautiful spring morning here in Sydney town. It's Friday. There's a gentle breeze building and coming in. Looks like it's coming in from the east, but I'll find some other flags and confirm it. But it's another day. It's Friday. It's a day where I don't go to my regular workplace, but I go to a meeting here at Pyrmont, which starts a little bit later than normal. So it's about 7:30, so I've got about an hour to use up. So what I thought I'd do is I'd invest that time in delivering another vlog for Jim's 5am Club. To click along the number, I think this one here is 1426. So I'm steadily but surely heading towards 1500 in English, and cementing the position that I have on my YouTube channel as being one of the most prolific vloggers of personal development material across the whole wide world. One thing for sure and for certain is that when you follow my vlog channel, I will guarantee that you will have variety, because the thing that I focus on is book summaries, OPE through book summaries, and I deliver vlogs on hundreds and thousands of different books, all highlighting different opinions, offering different life hacks and things that we can possibly use in our daily lives or in our careers. So what I'd like to do today is go through another book summary entitled How to Be Right by James O'Brien. So this book here is an interesting book, because what it does is it delves into agenda, persuasion, media, social influence, and it tries to, I guess, help us identify whether or not the material that is being presented through different channels can be relied on, or it could be manipulated in some way for political gain. So the author here says that comforting lies deliver many more clicks and attract many more viewers and listeners and profit than uncomfortable truths. So we are inundated by information, we're inundated by positions and opinions and personal views, and according to this author, a lot of that may be slanted for personal advantage. And the author then goes on to say that the problem with mass debates and mass opinion is that they are heavily opinionated and missing fact-based research, and in many ways rely on unfiltered data. I guess many of us over the past couple of years have had to live through COVID, have had to live through the misinformation and disinformation across various channels, and even now today, many people are still unsure on what happened, how it happened, who was right, who was wrong. But for all of us who lived through it, we know that it was very, very difficult and trying times, and we had to do something to steady the ship, because our future appeared back then to be uncertain, and there was a lot of uncertainty, doubt and fear, and people used that fear to leverage their messages in order to gain certain positional points in our lives. And as we now know and understand, there were lots of things that were said, lots of things that were postulated that from both sides, I guess you could probably say, that came from unfiltered data. So the call to action from this author is to avoid falling into the traps of clickbait and dishonesty by looking for facts, identifying agendas, identifying narratives, and to try and weed out many of those fake views and fake opinions which are just there to cause damage and to confuse people and lead them on a merry chase. So the first formal point to come from this author is where he says, and I agree with this wholeheartedly, where he says that the media can favour certain parties or opinions which in turn reflect on the everyday person. Just like we had with Brexit, just like we had with same-sex marriage, just like we had or we're having at the moment with the Indigenous voice in Parliament. There are many views and there are many opinions, and there are certain influences, certain media outlets, certain people in our lives which give much more airtime to one side of the story, which can influence and manipulate other people, because sadly people are biased and people can be influenced, because a lot of people think that volume equals truth. Just because there's a number of people on Twitter, just because the Twitterarchy, just because people on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn say things, or lots of people appear to be saying things, doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make it wrong. Now we've got to be able to understand that just because lots of people are leaning towards a similar sort of opinion, many of those people have or may have been influenced by people who may not be entirely honest, may not be entirely right in their view, may be emotional, but because of their position, because of their ability to influence through their position, through their status amongst their circle of followers, their disciples, they can make things much worse for more people. And as we said, there are agendas out there. There's agendas for Muslims, for terrorism, for same-sex, for climate change. I can't believe the amount of airtime we're getting for climate change. And we've got the government, the ALP government there with Beazley, not Beazley, what am I saying? Albanese. Geez, I've gone back a long time to talk about Beazley, but Albanese and the Greens trumpeting climate change as if it is an absolute truth. And we all know it's going to cost us lots and lots of money and have no impact whatsoever in the long term. Many of those views, as we are saying, and as this author reminds us, are very, very biased and are very weighted in terms of argument. And what we need is a class of journalism, a class of critical thinking to be able to remain unbiased and balanced, to be able to debate, to discuss, and to put forward both sides of the argument as opposed to just the one side. We need accurate information from reliable sources in order to make informed decisions and not to simply rely on some airhead who is an influencer and has a few 100,000 followers on Instagram or TikTok to be making the decisions for the majority. Because as we've learnt in the past, there is a silent majority who don't say very much, but save it for when it's most important. The author here taps into another interesting point, something that I think we've all been aware of, but not very many people are happy to talk about. And that's the fact that political correctness has taken over the world and is ruling the world in many ways, and has caused, I guess, more damage than what it's actually helped. The author here talks about a concept that is starting to take shape and gather momentum, where instead of Christmas, people called it Winterval. No? People stealing the terms. Now we've got the gay and lesbian, or the LGBTI plus minus divide by movement, misappropriating and taking the rainbow flag and using it for their own cause, and then having other people being uncomfortable to be associated with anything that has to do with the rainbow, even though the rainbow has been a very symbolic item from biblical days amongst the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims. But what we have today is we've got a lot of people, we've got movements, we've got agendas that are leveraging and piggybacking on symbols and symbolism and redefining those symbols and using that to influence and change the world that we live in and the way that we think. So we need to be careful at how we define things, or how we allow others to define important things in our life, because what will happen if we're not careful is that people will steal a lot of the images, a lot of the certainty, a lot of the things that we've grown up with and that we love, and take it and change it and destroy it. Now we've got the Australian flag up there, which for me, my family, and many people represents unity, represents inclusion, represents this nation. And yet you've got other people who want to fly a different flag. Some people want to fly a rainbow flag. Others want to fly an Indigenous flag. But the rainbow flag and the Indigenous flag are inclusive for their communities, but they're exclusive because they don't include the whole nation. They don't include everyone. And by being like that means that it's exclusive, it's divisive. It's important to have symbols that unite everybody under the same banner, rather than to have symbols that divide people and make people feel different and force people to think and behave differently. And with this political correctness, the author says that everything is made to seem as offensive. these days it's hard not to upset anyone, according to the author. And the media, influencers, social media, promote such scandals, and it causes much more harm than good, as we've seen and as we've lived over the past decade or two. Because people get more divided, they become more afraid to speak their minds. These days, I'm just shocked to see that many Christians that I know are too afraid to talk about and to share their Christian beliefs, not amongst strangers, but amongst their own families, for fear of being picked on, or for fear of being thought of as being old-fashioned. Which, as we say, for many of us here who are part of the older generation, I'm turning 62, or I've turned 62, these things were just a normal part of growing up. But in today's society, they seem to be foreign, where everything that I grew up knowing was right is now considered wrong, and everything that I grew up knowing was very wrong is now considered as being right. So there's been a great divide amongst the moral base and what makes us one and united. So the third point to come from this author is where he says that social media and the rise of fake news make it possible for everyone to share their opinions, which is not necessarily a great thing. With disinformation and misinformation and the ability to promote these views across multiple platforms very, very quickly without reliable research being done, means that there are people who are basing their decisions on unreliable sources without having the time nor the interest of verifying those interests or that accuracy. And as we said, what it does is it causes confusion, because fake news propagated through social media and through bogus influencers gets absorbed very, very quickly, and it gets transported wide and without filter. So we're living in a world now where people who have absolutely no expertise, and yet they have a featherweight opinion, are able to come across and sound as if they are an authority in something that they really have no experience or mastery in, other than to just talk about things in an authoritarian way. So what this has done, or what this is doing, is it's creating a massive distrust amongst the community, and it's dividing people, because, as we said, you no longer know what is right, what is wrong. Everything is right, everything is wrong, depending on the agenda, depending on your point of view, depending on where you live and who you socialise with. But what is happening is that it's making everybody distrust government, distrust traditional media, and it's pushing the pendulum of influence from the people who have the heavyweight opinion to the ones who have the featherweight opinion, who are able to gaslight, who are able to make trouble, and to get through life and to pass on their opinions without fear of consequence. They don't know, they don't care whether or not what they say is going to hurt or damage the majority, as long as they just satisfy their own selfish minority needs. Anyway, I think I'm done for today, so thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. I'm just over here in front of the Dockside reception lounge, which is owned and managed by a friend of mine, Theo Drivis, and his team. So what I'll do now is I'll just head across to Pyrmont and enjoy this beautiful, this most magnificent Sydney springtime morning. We've got the Crown Casino over there, we've got cranes on top of Sydney Harbour 1, the new Lendlease development, and another glorious way to start the day. Hopefully we'll have some good weather for the next few weeks. I've taken next week off work to do some errands, to work on my deck at home, and I can't wait to do something different and hopefully come to you from a different place with a different message of empowerment and continue this project, this life ambition of mine, to be and to continue to be one of the most prolific bloggers of personal development material, not only in Sydney, not only in Australia, but across the world, where I'm able to take OPE, other people's experiences, in the form of book summaries, and to share them with my community, with my friends and family, and anybody else who can gain from it, can use it. And please share this with anybody you know who could benefit from it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Jim's 5am Club, and hopefully we can continue this unique and powerful journey for as long as possible, for as long as we have the energy, the resources, and the need to live, learn, and pass it on, and to continue on our path of growth and development. Yasas, take care, and thanks for listening to me, by the way. I get a lot of enjoyment out of doing this, but as I say, I don't know the impact that it has at the other end, but putting it out on social media will at least keep it there for many more generations to come, hopefully. Take care, Yasas, and bye for now.